Hey guys, it's me, and I'm here today to do a special review for you guys. Part of my classic movie night segment, as I'm coming to call it. In honor of its 45th anniversary this month, I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but I'm here today to talk about Steven Spielberg's Jaws, released in 1975, starring Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss. A lot has been said about Jaws in the years since its release, and the amount of sequels that followed after that, they didn't even come close to the cinematic heights that this film had. Now, about 6 years ago or so, I did a collab review with my buddy 22 Tiger Dude on this movie during the month of October 2014. I was starting out at the time doing movie reviews, but I knew one day that I was going to have to do a video of my own on this one. So here I am doing more of like an up-to-date and hopefully a more in-depth review of this thing. And I'm aware that I'm probably not going to be talking about a lot of stuff that hasn't already been said, but like with a lot of other movies, I'm going to give you guys my own experience and how I managed to perceive the film in all the times that I've watched this. First time I saw Jaws was the summer of 2001 when I was 11 years old. I went to a recreational center near my house. It was a day camp of sorts. At that age, my parents weren't really confident in leaving me at the house by myself, so they wanted me to go to a place where they knew that I was going to be taken good care of. And one day, the counselors at the day camp showed us Jaws. I'd heard about it before, and I might have seen a clip or two of it on TV at the time, but I was always afraid to watch it because a shark eating people in the water at the beach didn't necessarily sit well with me, and it still doesn't even today. In fact, ever since this movie, I only go about maybe this deep into the ocean. Not much else. I don't care what other experts out there say, I ain't going out in the ocean. That ain't happening. But at 11 years old, I was pretty mesmerized by this film. The experience and the ride of trying to figure out what the shark is doing and how it's staked a claim off the shores of Amity Island and how all these people are trying to deal with the situation and how the police chief, Brody, is trying to warn the town of what's out there and nobody's really listening to him. They think he's just the boy who cried wolf. And then enough people are getting eaten and then they realize, oh, wait a minute, okay, we gotta bring the cavalry on this one. And as I was watching the movie, other kids that were in my group, they were ranging from about 10 to 14 years old. Certain moments like the body popping out of the wreckage of the boat, or the lifeguard getting eaten alive, or Quint getting eaten alive. Those were pretty unpleasant experiences, in a good way, not in a bad way. But unfortunately, a lot of the kids in my group, because it was so gruesome and gory and they weren't really allowed to watch movies like that at that age, they were hooting and hollering and they were cheering. They were going, "Wah, yeah!" And that was 3 times that the counselors had to turn off the movie and say, that is not funny. If you guys can't keep yourselves together, we're not going to finish the movie. And they promised, and for a while they managed to cooperate until another thing happened, and then another, and then another. So, most of the other kids were laughing. I didn't find it funny. It was scary. But when you're in between the ages of 10 and 14, your mind's going to be pretty twisted. At least for most boys anyway. And it wasn't until about 2 years after that, in the summer of '03, when my grandparents showed it to me on DVD, that's when I really started to somewhat more appreciate it. And as I've gotten older and watching certain scenes, it's made me realize that this is probably the best creature feature or best horror movie or scary movie of sorts that's ever been made, or at least up there in the leagues of some other films like Psycho, The Birds, North by Northwest, or Rear Window, when it comes to suspense at least. Now, those of you who have seen it, you guys know what the plot of this movie is, but for those of you who don't, I'm going to be going into some spoilers, so that's your warning. A shark has staked a claim off the shores of this island called Amity Island, and it's eating people left and right, and therefore the local police chief, Brody, with the help of an oceanographer, Matt Hooper, and a fisherman named Quint, go on a hunt to find this thing and kill it. Chief Brody's trying to convince the town of what's going on. Nobody's really listening to him. But certain people are still getting eaten by the shark, and it takes a really close call on the 4th of July for the town to finally admit that they have a shark problem. And then they send the 3 guys out on the ocean to find it and kill it. And despite the fact that this was Steven Spielberg's second movie that was released theatrically, this is the one where most people feel like he came into his own. The way it's made, the way it's directed, it's very effective, and it's got a lot of good heart to it, and characters that are so well fleshed out. And the casting is spot on. It's not just about the shark, it's also about the characters trying to find a way to kill this thing, and they give you reasons to care about them, like Chief Brody being afraid of water, Matt Hooper showing an interest in sharks ever since a baby shark ate his boat at the age of 12 years old, or Quint waiting for a rescue plane to show up while waiting in the water and a shark was hovering around killing off his friends left and right after the Indianapolis sank. And this was actually the first blockbuster in film history where a bunch of people would line around along the block and they bust the block. blockbuster. And it happened again 2 years later in 1977 when the original Star Wars came out. But this was the first blockbuster that ever came into the public eye. There's so many reasons that people have talked about over the years that show you why the movie holds up the way it does today. One of them being the suspense that builds up with not seeing the shark for the first 45 minutes of the movie. I'm sure those of you already know, but for those of you who don't, Spielberg has publicly said, and other people from the production have said this too, that he wasn't going to take this project unless he was given permission by the studio to not show the shark for the first half of the movie. And that's also because the shark that they were using wasn't always working, so they had to improvise by using things like the floating dock, or the yellow barrel, or the POV shots as you're seeing it from the shark's point of view as he's moving in on the kid Alex Kittner, or on its first victim, Chrissy, in the opening sequence of the film. I think if it were to come out today, Spielberg would be really pressured by the studio to show the shark right away. And if that were to happen, the suspense would be gone. That's why until you finally see the shark show up eating that lifeguard, you're waiting so long for this thing to finally show its face, and then when you do see it, it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. And John Williams' music building up that tension. I was gripping my seat, my palms were sweating. I just sat there in awe. And speaking of John Williams, do I have to say anything else about John Williams? I mean, the guy's a freaking master. That main theme that plays in the opening of the film and in other parts of the film, it still remains recognizable to this day. And if you haven't seen Jaws, when you hear that music, you know where it's from. And it's not just that too, it's also other scenes like this.
That's a 20-footer.
25. 3 tons on them.
Or even in a smaller moment like this, where Brody and his son are mocking each other and making faces at each other. Come here. Give us a kiss. Why? Because I need it. Get out of here. Also playing into the suspense of not showing the shark. When Chrissy gets eaten alive in the opening of the film, her getting tugged around the water from below. You know the shark's there, but you don't know exactly how strong this thing is, because considering how long it takes for her to fight, whoa. Same thing for when the shark eats Alex or breaks off that dock, and you see the dock heading back towards those 2 fishermen. It lets you know that this is not the typical shark that we usually see in the ocean. This thing is a monster. And even when you see it pop out of the water, it's not so obvious that it's a mechanical prosthetic shark. It actually holds up still to this day. It's not like it's just going... No, I buy that that's an actual real shark. And another thing with John Williams' music, one of my favorite parts is this.
Hurry it up, he's coming straight for us. Don't screw it up now.
Don't wait for me.
Come on, Hooper, come on, hurry up, tie it on!
The way Spielberg helms that sequence, it's one of the most riveting scenes that I've ever seen in a movie. Hooper, hurry it up now, tie it on. Come on, Hooper, come on, hurry it up, tie it on! And then there's the characters, which, as I said, are so well fleshed out. And they give you good reasons for caring about them and understanding their mindset and their perspective and how that plays into them fighting the shark. Roy Scheider as Chief Brody is absolutely terrific. Richard Dreyfuss is also really good, and Robert Shaw is a scene stealer in every scene that he's in. And the dynamic that plays between these three, it is so believable and just perfect. You buy that these are real people from completely different backgrounds and different walks of life, but they all have this one common goal of killing the shark. And the scene where Hooper and Quint are getting drunk and comparing scars and tattoos with each other, it's hilarious. Don't tell me. Mother. But then it turns out that particular tattoo is from the USS Indianapolis. Now, I'm not too familiar with the actual event of the Indianapolis, but for those of you who don't know, in the final months of World War II, a naval ship called the USS Indianapolis was carrying the first atomic bomb that was dropped on the city of Hiroshima in Japan. That was a secret mission, and they managed to deliver the bomb, but a Japanese submarine sunk the ship, and a lot of the crew was left in the water stranded and had to wait what seemed like ages for help to arrive. They didn't know if they were going to die, they didn't know if they were going to survive. And Quint's monologue in describing this event, how scared he felt when finally a US plane showed up to help them out, and he knew that a shark was out there.
So 1,100 men went in the war. 316 men come out. The Sharks took the rest June the 29th, 1945.
Not only is it the best scene in the film, and Spielberg has said that that's his favorite moment in the film, but it's one of the best scenes that I've ever seen in any movie. Sharks got lifeless eyes, doll's eyes. Oh, then you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming, and they all come in and rip you to pieces. I'll never put on a life jacket again, Chief. Then you have Richard Dreyfuss, who plays Matt Hooper, who's an oceanographer, and ever since he was a kid, when a baby thresher shark ate his boat, he's been really interested in sharks in general. And his dynamic with Chief Brody is really good too, and how they try to convince Mayor Vaughn that this is an actual legitimate threat that they have to deal with, that they might have to close the beaches, or they have to send somebody out to kill it. I think I am familiar with the fact that you are going to ignore this particular problem until it swims up and bites you on the ass. Now, there are two ways to solve this problem. You're either going to kill this animal, or you're going to cut off its food supply. I want those paint-happy bastards caught and hung up by their Buster Browns. That's it. Goodbye. I'm not going to waste my time arguing with someone who's lining up to be a hot lunch. Speaking of the mayor, I don't know the actor's name, but there's a really good moment where after the lifeguard dies and Chief Brody's son almost dies of shock after seeing it happen, he feels a deep sense of regret and embarrassment considering that he pushed for the beaches to be open, and now everybody's saying, like, wait a minute. My kids could have died out there. I could have died out there. That shark was out there, and you wanted those beaches open anyway? How could you? And then when he says this,
my kids were on that beach too.
At least for me, it's hard for me to not feel a little bit of sympathy for him. So when everything finally comes to a head, after Hooper is forced to swim out of the cage, Quint's been eaten by the shark, Chief Brody's all alone by himself in the sinking boat. To me, it feels very earned, because they set up the fact that he's really scared of the water. But now he's on his own, and he has to do whatever it takes to fight off this shark. And Roy Scheider is 100% believable this whole time. From throwing the tank into the shark's mouth, stabbing him with a spike, and then finally using the World War II rifle to shoot the tank and blow it up, killing the shark.
Smile, you son of a...
Is there any more satisfying death of a villain? I'm sure there is, but this I think in some ways takes the cake. So in conclusion, Jaws is one of those movies that every time you watch it, or at least from my perspective, it gets better and better every single time. It never gets old. And I think that another 45 years from now, this movie's still gonna hold up and put a lot of other creature features like it to shame. Considering that this is an adaptation of the original novel by Peter Benchley, who shows up in this movie in a small cameo as a news reporter during the 4th of July sequence, I'd say this is probably one of the best book adaptations that we've had. And since I mentioned how this movie holds up, I've actually seen a couple of YouTube videos where kids are watching this for the first time, or people watch this for the first time. It's really fun seeing their reactions to it. And I guarantee you that 50 or 60 years from now, we're gonna see similar reactions when people watch this for the first time. So those are my thoughts on Steven Spielberg's Jaws. What are your thoughts on the movie? Do you love it, like it, think it's alright, or do you hate it? Whatever the case is, comment below and tell me your thoughts, and I'll see you all very soon.